We're here to talk to her, Brian Fonseca from the New York Post and Action Network as well. Brian, how you doing, man?
Doing all right. The Wizards covered. Thankfully, I did not bet on this game because I thought the Knicks might get it done. But second half of a back-to-back. So what are you gonna do?
Yeah, second half back to back, Knicks sweep, obviously. Another win for them. It was a grind, obviously, to the end. Like you said, the Wizards covered. But let's start off with Jalen Brunson, 41 points tonight. Guy came off an injury with the calf. He puts together two back to back good performances, 35 points, I believe, last night as well. So, I mean, you heard MVP chants from the Knicks fans. What more can you say about Jalen Brunson, the effort he put in tonight, and just the willingness to score and just put this team on his back?
Jalen Brunson should be starting in the All-Star game. That's what I think. Jalen Brunson should be an All-Star starter alongside probably Tyrese Halliburton. I think he's been probably the best guard in the Eastern Conference this year and sort of is just very much responsible for the Pacers having an all-time offense, although I don't know how much that means because we have an all-time great offense every season now because of the way the offense is. And speaking of great offense, Jalen Brunson was sensational again tonight. Now, to the surprise of no one, he was cooking the Washington Wizards. We know who plays for the Washington Wizards.
Yeah.
Nobody defensively that you're particularly worried about in that starting lineup, particularly in the backcourt. Hi, Jordan Poole. And Jalen Brunson lit him up. He was sensational. Again, getting to the mid-range area, killing you with floaters, mid-range jumpers, three-point shots. He was 2 for 4, didn't do a
Oof.
lot, but he was still efficient, very effective, and particularly the free throw line where he is just great at getting contact. If you follow me on Twitter at all, I've been talking about free throw rate as it pertains to certain guards this week. And Jalen Brunson is one of the guys who actually gets to the line and has been a three-level scorer for the Knicks. Not something that a lot of people saw coming. Oh, by the way, also had 8 rebounds, 8 assists on the night. Had a bunch of turnovers as well. So, not the cleanest game, but I do think he should be starting in the All-Star game. And you remember, Ryan, talked about this last year. I thought he should have been an All-Star last season.
Yeah.
She thought that he should have been the Knicks All-Star over Julius Randle. I think there's a chance they both get in this year. Given how the positions are starting to shake out and, injuries could be a factor and whatever. These two guys play, and with Tom Thibodeau, they're playing a lot. We could get into that in a second because all the starters played roughly 40 minutes. OG Anunoby played 43. So we'll see
Crazy.
what's doing, but this is an issue that they're going to have to solve with their bench, part of the sort of other side of trading Emmanuel quickly. But Jalen Brunson was great, and I think he should be starting in the All-Star game.
Yeah, it's a great point about Brunson. And then the other part I want to talk to you about was Anunoby. Guy brings up 19 points, 7 rebounds. He's someone that defends obviously your best player. You could take that asset, he you could take him and kind of plug him and play him, and he can defend pretty much anyone on the floor. I think that's what's really impressive about him as he's coming and acclimated with this Knicks team. What have you noticed with Anunoby since he's come over in that trade?
Yeah, he's somebody that they're relying upon heavily. He led the team in minutes again tonight. And OG Anunoby is clearly, we knew this once the deal was done. He's going to be a Tom Thibodeau favorite because he can give you some two-way play effectively. Like a lot of what he was doing with the Raptors. My sort of criticism with OG Anunoby before was not really a harsh criticism or whatever, but it was just more so the nerds on Twitter who were like, hey, there's so much more to his offensive game. He could do this, that, and the third if he gets a different offensive role. And it's like, I don't think that's the case, but we probably would have seen it already. And also, he
Right.
doesn't have to be that guy that people envision offensively because Jalen Brunson is there, as is Julius Randle. The Knicks have one, if not two All-Stars. One guy who should be an All-Star this year, one guy who's been an All-Star already, and maybe one again this year. So OG Anunoby can do the same things. And defensively, yeah, you can pair him up with a lot of what you see around the NBA. And a lot of what you see are these big wings who are kind of lead ball handlers on a lot of different teams. And OG Anunoby is somebody you're going to throw on in the Eastern Conference. You're going to see him guard at different points, maybe Damian Lillard and Giannis Antetokounmpo, right? Like there are going to be some switchability there that you can sort of tinker with. Chris Middleton in particular is probably the guy you want him on in general because Chris Middleton's obviously a wing. But you look at the Celtics side, there's Jalen Brunson, there's Jason Tatum, sorry about
Yep.
that, and Jalen
Nope.
Brown. And then with the Heat, obviously you have Jimmy Butler. And you look at some of the other teams like up and down the floor, OG Anunoby is going to be guarding a lot of the best players and also can give you efficient offense like you saw today, scoring at all three levels and doing so effectively over 50% from three and 67% from the field, you'll take that every time.
Yeah, and the part when it comes to when you trade for someone like Anunoby is you trade your depth away, right? Like we talked about with Emmanuel quickly and with RJ Barrett. So the other part of this is now the Knicks obviously are stacking up wins, but that bench, like you mentioned, is very short considering Hart is still dealing with that knee soreness. We saw what happened when Brunson goes down. They don't have that backup point guard that you can really rely on. Grimes seems frustrated. The Knicks are rumored to be floating his name to trade him away. So you're looking to trade more bench pieces, but at the same time, the Knicks need more scoring to come off that bench. So we've seen rumors of who they've been interested in. So Brian, what do you think? Like, who are those some of those names you think the Knicks are going to be possibly looking at to maybe address this bench scoring position?
So some of the guys who have been floated out there, who have been tied to the Knicks, this is by Mark Stein, by Ian Begley, by just credible reporters. Which the word credible is very important there because you'll see a lot of people just throwing shit out there on Twitter. Like, no, these guys are elite, right? And the Knicks, there's been interest on potentially Bruce Brown because he seems like a guy that could be rerouted from the Toronto Raptors after being involved in that Pascal Siakam trade.
Right.
They have like Bruce Brown type of dudes already on the roster, Josh Hart in particular, like not the same kind of guy, but you'd be looking for Bruce Brown to give you some of that, and you don't really need that on your roster anymore of what he does as a guard who can play multiple positions and who the Nets were playing at the four at one point. I don't think you need that on your roster right now. Malcolm Brogdon, the medicals historically bad coming out of college. We've seen that bear out a little bit in the NBA. Not sure you want to bet on that, particularly with Tom Thibodeau as your head coach. Terry Rozier, who I love and is my favorite player that we're going to be talking about here probably. Not in a great situation. He's in Charlotte. People get on his defense. I would say that he's playing next to LaMelo Ball. And Terry Rozier, we forget because it was a while ago, had some moments in that Celtics playoff run without Kyrie Irving where they were more successful than they were with Kyrie Irving. And they went to game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals. Now, that wasn't because of Terry Rozier, but he did play a role in that when he was very young in his career. I don't think he makes sense with Jalen Brunson, though. I think should probably want to pay more for Terry Rozier than the Knicks would. He's a fun player and is getting downhill this year and scoring efficiently. DeJounte Murray, he's the sort of big name here. I think he makes sense. The problem is the shooting, right? Do you trust that his shooting, which has been better this season, do you trust that his perimeter is legit? You need to be able to trust that because Jalen Brunson, Julius Randle, like you want to put shooters around these guys, particularly, and I always talk about this. As hard as I may sound on Julius Randle, he is, when he wants to be, a great playmaker from that 4 spot. And when he's passing the ball and finding some of these shooters, you want guys to knock down the ball. DeJounte Murray is struggling right now playing next to Trae Young in terms of the your turn, my turn offense. I don't know how much that's going to change with Jalen Brunson. So I wouldn't overpay for him, though I could see why you'd make that move. I'd have questions about how that exactly works. And then Jordan Clarkson, I don't know if he'd be a Tibbs favorite, but I mean, he'd be interesting because he can create some offense, be a bucket getter, and as someone you could actually plug in to this Emmanuel Quickly 6-man role that you had, right? Like he might be interesting because you need some scoring coming off your bench. We just looked at the bench without Josh Hart, and even with Josh Hart is there, respectively, you're not looking for Josh Hart to get sort of pop off the bench scoring wise. You're looking for a lot of other things. You're looking for defense. You're looking for rebounding. You're looking for grit. You're looking for effective shooting when he does want to shoot the ball, but you're not looking for someone who's going to just create offense, come in and do that. They don't really have someone to do that post Emmanuel Quickly. I think Jordan Clarkson, and talking it out, he's probably the guy that I would look at. Along with Terry Rozier. I think Terry Rozier, if he comes off your bench, that makes a lot of sense. But again, what are you going to have to give up to get some of these pieces? I think there are some interesting names, and I think there's something we talked about with the OG Anunoby thing. I think the Knicks are going to do something else. It's just a matter of when. I don't know if it's going to be this season. I don't know if it's going to be this summer, but it's just a matter of when because they still have all that draft capital, and they still have, for now, Evan Fournier's contract that they could try to put in a deal.
Yeah, Fournier's contract obviously is expiring after this season. You have that. You have the draft capital that you mentioned. It is interesting. Some of those names you bring up, obviously. A guy like Clarkson and Rozier, they'll give you a ton of scoring. A guy like DeJounte Murray, 2 ways, can be an effective player. Obviously, like you said, needs to be more consistent with the shooting. But it'll be fascinating to see how the Knicks handle this trade deadline approaching. And like I said, 3 weeks away. If they're going to go for it and push their chips all in, obviously they could use a little more size, I would say, coming off the bench as well without Mitchell Robinson. You still don't know if he's going to return this year. And then you got Isaiah Hartenstein, who's great rebounder and could give you a little bit of offense. But, you like to have a little bit more size, I feel like, off that bench, especially when you give Hartenstein a breather. But Brian, we appreciate you, man, just breaking down the Knicks win and what's going to happen with this team moving forward. And thank you for your insight as always, man.
Trade deadline only in 3 weeks.